Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the Ward 4 School Committee Candidate Forum. Before we begin, this week we lost a member of our Cove Elementary School family. Please consider making a donation to help the family of Moses Schumau. Go to the Cove PTA Facebook page for more information. Thank you. So my name is Rick Grandoni, and I will be the moderator for this evening. We have two candidates running for Ward 4 School Committee. John Mulady, who is the incumbent, and Jeffrey Silva, who is the challenger. So I'll be asking a series of questions, and our candidates will both have the opportunity to answer the same question. We'd like to keep the answers under 5 minutes so that we can get through all of the content this evening. So let's get started. John, tell us a bit about yourself and your connection to the school district.
Sure. So I am a public school teacher. I teach at Manchester Essex Regional High School. I'm a social studies teacher. I teach mostly ninth grade, but I also teach an elective called 9/11 and the War on Terror that is for juniors and seniors. My wife and I first moved to Beverly in 2010. My wife's family is from Beverly, so my children are fifth generation Beverly residents. And when we were talking about buying a house and finding a place to live, we wanted somewhere we can call home and raise our children. And we have been very blessed with our neighborhood and our community. It's been a great opportunity to be on the school committee for the past 4 years. When I first moved to Beverly, I tried to get involved in my new home as fast as I could. I joined the Beverly Historical Society, now known as Historic Beverly. Later on became a trustee. I ran unsuccessfully twice for city council, but after one of those candidate forums at the Cove Community Center, then Mayor Scanlon came up to me and asked if I would consider becoming a member of the planning board, which I did that for a couple of years. And then after the birth of our son Teddy, I stepped down from the planning board, and there was an opening for school committee in Ward 4, and I ran unopposed then, and have been involved since.
Thank you. So Jeff, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and your connection to the school committee? District, sorry.
I grew up in Beverly. I attended Beadle School for a year or so, moved out of Beverly and then back in where I attended Memorial Middle School, and I graduated Beverly High School in 1986. I went to Merrimack College, commuted from Beverly for the 4 years. I graduated there in 1990. Continued my education, went to Johns Hopkins to study chemistry, and was fortunate enough to be able to come back to Beverly, landing a position in Boston to continue my education, and my wife landing a position here in Boston as well. So we were fortunate enough to come back to Beverly to raise our family, where we started our family, four children. Our oldest, Andrew, Lucas, James, and Jocelyn. And all of our kids attended Beverly High School, Cove, Briscoe, and two now in Beverly High School. I've worked locally at Waters Corporation. They have an office here in the Cummings Center as well as in Milford. So I commuted, fortunate enough to have an office in the Cummings and be able to commute to Milford a couple days a week. After Waters, I joined Cell Signaling Technology, and I was there for about 8 years. During that time, I got involved in coaching, did some coaching with soccer, got involved later with lacrosse, and now I'm working at Adeptrix at a startup. And because of the location, I'm able to still be involved with coaching. I've been able to serve as an external advisor for scientific educational purposes as well. Been involved in the Gloucester Biotech Academy, where I work both at where I worked at CST and Adeptrix, had the opportunity to bring in interns, work with college and high school students, and serve as a mentor to them and help them move from the school environment to either their first job or getting pursuing a college career. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
that- Yeah.
So Jeff, let you continue. What motivates your desire to be on the Beverly School Committee?
I enjoy volunteer work through the coaching and teaching of the kids. I found that I really enjoyed doing that, and at work with the internships and the opportunity to work with both high school and undergraduates, I found it rewarding to basically help them out, to serve as a role model. I had a lot of great role models in high school, in college, some great people that I've worked with at Waters and Cell Signaling. And so I kind of consider this as a pay-forward opportunity to help kids out and help them understand what they can achieve. I had the opportunity through the interns to help move as they were considering as they were graduating undergrad, finding their first job, giving them an opportunity also to contribute in science and inspire them to want to do more, having them participate in publishing as well as international conferences, and having them get in front and present their work to help them get excited about science. So also I'm very interested, in addition to working with kids, I'm very interested in how the city manages its resources, paying for the operations of the city, as well as how it manages the funds to operate the school system. And I'd like to use that opportunity to at least see if there's opportunities to save, to find opportunities to be more efficient and improve productivity.
Yeah. John, want to take that question? What motivates your desire to be on the Beverly School Committee?
So I think that anybody who gets into education at any level does it because they want to serve, they want to give back, and it could be inspiring future leaders, or because you had a person in your life have a positive impact on you. I think for me, it was after teaching in the public schools for a number of years, I started to get a little bit concerned how some people outside of education were making decisions that impacted our lives in the classroom. I found it to be a little bit frustrating that people have a tendency to come in and dictate what the budgets are going to be, what the salaries are, and those decisions impact a teacher's learning space, which also is the learning space of their students. So where teachers work or where students learn. And I felt that when the seat was vacant and it was open, that I would use my experience in the classroom to run for a school committee, because I know the consequences of cutting budgets for the sake of meeting a bottom line. And having been able to be an advocate and an ally for our teachers and for our students has been one of the driving forces for me to stay involved on the school committee.
Thank you. So John, next question. What specific strengths would you bring to the school committee?
I think obviously it's my charming personality, which has become very clear through this pained body language. But my 15 years as a teacher, being in the classroom, working with students, parents, administrators, my time being on our teachers union at Manchester Essex, and as well as my previous job at Wellesley Middle School. My 4 years on the school committee, I feel like I've learned a lot. I've learned that we work best as a city when all our participants are collaborating and working together, that no one person can make a single difference, that you need to work as a team or at least get a majority. I've been through a couple of budget cycles. I've gone through one round of negotiations. We have another round of negotiations coming up. Education is my passion. I gave up a lot of sacrifices for myself as well as for my family to pursue a career in education. And that passion is continuing to drive me and why I'm running for re-election. I would also say I think I'm very empathetic. Talking to constituents, whether it's through email, over the phone, or meeting with them, I try to put myself in their shoes and hear them out and hear their concerns for their child or for their school. And I think I'm a very good collaborator. I think if you look back at previous meetings, you can see that sometimes I am the older brother, and there could be a quarrel between different members, and I try to keep people focused and working together. And I understand that at the end of the day, I'm going to be tirelessly fighting for every student, for every teacher in our city. I don't have a personal agenda that I'm trying to push. I'm trying to work with all my other members. I want to keep that going.
Thanks. Jeff, you want to take that one?
I enjoy solving. I'm an analytical person, so I do like to look at complex problems and try to sort of see how I can contribute to come up with solutions. In the professions that I've had, I've worked with a diverse number of people, multidisciplinary, whether it's coming up with new technology, publishing work that involves the work of others. It's a collaborative effort to bring those people together and come up with a way to either come up with a product idea, marketing idea. So I think building consensus, I do like to work with people and build consensus and move things forward. And I think with regard to working with students, this comes across by me empowering them to go through the steps of learning and discovering, collaborating with them to have them discover sort of how the process works. And one of the particularly rewarding opportunities that I had was having an intern that where I encouraged him to present at an international conference because of the work that he conducted during the time with me. And he was so excited that he brought his family, stood at the poster, presented the work. So those types of things is the encouragement, collaboration, working together as a team to accomplish the goals.
Great. So next question, Jeff. What are 2 or 3 needs that must be priorities for our district to address? And why do you see these as needs?
So I have there's a couple points here. One of the things that I think is really important, we've brought in technology into the classroom, which is great, and that'll help evolve how education is delivered to students and potentially even improve and increase productivity and allow you to individualize how you can teach different students. Along with computers, smartphones have also made its way into the school system, and I think that one of the things that we need to do is just revisit the policies, make sure that the technology that we do have in the school system is serving as a way to enhance the education and not serve as a distraction. And mainly what I'm thinking about is the smartphone policies. I think they need to be really clear, since they can easily serve as a distraction in the classroom. We need to reinforce acceptable behavior of technology in the classroom for the students, not only within the class, but how it affects them outside of the class, because how they utilize that technology in the work environment can also be a distraction. We've had students come in interviewing for positions in the laboratory, and one of my litmus tests is seeing how soon someone will pick up their phone during that interview process and check it while we're trying to have an interaction. And so I think that's something that's important. One of the other things that I think is important is that with neighboring towns having free full day kindergarten, I think it's something that that Beverly really needs to think hard about, because if they want to attract young parents, young families, this could potentially be a way to change, whether or not a family moves into Beverly or not. And with cost of with parents often needing to both work, it is a disadvantage to have not be able to offer that to our community. The last thing that I'll bring up is that having coached, I've realized, and I wasn't a big sports guy in high school, but I realized how important sports clubs is needed in the school system, especially now. Computers, technology, when kids are immersed in this, can isolate them. And those interactions that kids have in either a sport or a club allows them to learn the social skills that they're going to need outside of school, outside of high school. And so, teamwork, learning how to fail, basically picking up and moving on, learning how to fail, and setting goals and time management. These are all important things that you get from a club and sport environment.
Thank you. So John, 2 or 3 priorities and why?
Sure. I think big priority we're focusing on the school committee currently is our attempts at closing the achievement gap, which means that targeting specific demographics in our city that are falling behind their peers, not just in standardized testing, but also at the school level. Coming up with different types of programs and different ways that we can address those needs. We recently had a presentation done by Dot Flaherty, our assistant superintendent, about our MCAS scores. A couple of my colleagues asked some really good questions about specific demographics, and we're going to be taking a deep dive into those numbers coming up. And I think, one of the topics that Jeff talked about, I think you shamed everybody to put their phones away while you were talking, so I
Oh, did I really?
I appreciated that. Thank you. It was necessary. This comes down to funding. And we have a school budget that is, for all intents and purposes, set by the mayor. And as a school committee, working with central office, we try to create a budget that is the best possible budget for all our learners, all our paras, all our teachers, all our educators. And you can't look at a budget as a business in a school setting. We can't just look at the bottom line. It costs money to care. And finding ways to continue to advocate for a larger slice of the pie is something that I've done over the past couple of years. Some other members of the school committee have done as well, and we want to continue to do that. We can't have more funding for our sports. We can't have more programming if we don't have the funds and the staffing to make that possible. And then finally, we need to continue to have these tough conversations about the social emotional needs of our students. attending school is very different than it was for you and I and for our audience at home. When we had a bad day, we came home, the bad day was left at school. But with technology, it can follow you. And because of that, we're seeing an increase in anxiety, we're seeing an increase in depression all over the place. So having our staff that are willing to address the social emotional needs of our students and making sure that we have that training. So currently, at the high school, it was proposed with the new Chapter 70 funding to have a program that would allow students who are coming back to the high school from a hospitalization to be in this program as a kind of like a bridge between the general classroom and hospitalization or at home. And we can't just rely on this one particular teacher that's going to be doing that. It's going to need to be more. And we should be talking about more counselors at our elementary schools, at our middle schools. We should be having librarians in our elementary schools. We don't have that. And this all comes down to funding. So I would say that's a big priority that we need to talk about.
Thank you. So, John, what do you see as the biggest challenges of the school committee?
When I first saw this question, I had a more positive one, but to be honest, I'm not feeling so positive about addressing this. So I think the biggest challenge that we're facing on the school committee is we have a fixed mindset about funding our schools. And we're told, essentially, that the city has been given X amount of money towards our budget year after year, as if we should be saying, thank you, that's good enough. But it's not. We fund, on average, less per pupil than our neighboring districts. And that's something that I think we should be really embarrassed about. The cost of educating our students across the state is going up. And many of those costs are mandated by law. So we cannot accept this attitude that we should be happy to have more money every year. And I once said to another member of the school committee regarding teacher salaries, because there was a concern about police officers and firefighters and negotiating their salaries. And my father is a retired firefighter. My neighbor is a police officer. This is nothing about first responders, but first responders can negotiate overtime. A teacher cannot negotiate overtime. So last night, after I attended our city's finance and property subcommittee meeting, and $98,000 was taken from Chapter 70 funding to go towards a bill that should be paid for on the city side. I heard a counselor on this council that I completely respect and I admire say that $98,000 is just a drop in the bucket. It's not a drop in the bucket. We are begging for nickels and dimes each year. We are fighting for every amount of funding we can get, but we're up against, sometimes it feels like a brick wall. And I'm looking out there and I see a lot of allies that are nodding their heads, and I hear you and I see you, and we're going to continue to fight for more funding. We have to. And it's not going to be solved just at the school committee. We're going to rely on our friends in city council. We're going to rely on our elected state officials, and we're going to rely on our teachers union to remind our elected officials there's a lot of teachers who live and vote in our city, and elections have consequences.
Thank you. Jeff? What are the biggest challenges of the school committee?
Here, I think that sort of to resonate what John had said, I think that the whole process of adopting and overseeing the annual budget is going to a couple of the school committees and seeing them go through that is a daunting task. But it also, when budgets are provided, it's in our best interest to try to stick to that as best as we can, to ensure fiscal responsibility. Now, that's not to say that you can't ask for more money in the next cycle, figure out ways to bring in funds through grant opportunities, other opportunities to supplement goals and objectives. But that's one of the biggest challenges that I see. Also, I think one of the other points is really being able to set clear expectations for achievement for the superintendent, for our school system, and establishing reliable mechanisms that we can look at, revisit throughout the year to document and see how we're how we're doing, whether we're succeeding, failing in certain things, but in a positive way, using these as metrics to improve the way that we're running the school system.
Thank you. Okay, this is a good question. Jeff, if you could be any Star Wars character, who would you be and why?
Okay. This was, I have a favorite actor, Harrison Ford, so I'm going to have to say Han Solo. I think why, he's someone that, to me, is daring, self-reliant, willing to fight for what is right, not afraid to challenge authority, question the status quo, come up with solutions. So that's sort of why Han Solo.
John?
I just wanted to clarify something, and then I'll explain why my character is better than yours. I do believe in fiscal responsibility, but you cannot claim as a community or cry about fiscal responsibility if there's been tax breaks and incentives to corporations and developers that could be bringing in revenue to our schools. Obi-Wan Kenobi, who saw the talent and the future of Luke Skywalker. Ewan McGregor is absolutely positively outstanding. Obi-Wan Kenobi is a pretty good teacher. And I just want to go on the record and say my wife hated this question because Liz hates Star Wars.
Okay, this is a little bit of a long question. Studies show that representation, inclusive of race, ethnicity, and across gender identity, ability, and others, have positive effects on achievement for minority students and wonderful benefits for all students in a school. With the understanding that teachers and educators in Beverly share this view, what plan would you implement so that our current kindergartners can expect, and not just hope for, more representation in their school experience? Second part, how would you best not only recruit, but retain and support diverse candidates for teaching and other education department positions? John?
So if this was an essay question, Leah Jones, this would be very challenging. This is a multi-paragraph response. So in terms of planning, I really do like this question. It's something that we mentioned at our candidate search for our superintendent. It was something that I acknowledge that my children have the privilege of going to a school where their teachers and the adults look just like them. And that is not how it is for many, many of our students. So the plan is, or should be, as a district, we need to be having job fairs in different urban settings. We need to try and recruit more diverse fellows. We love our Endicott fellows, but Endicott isn't exactly the most diverse college that we have, so we need to reach out to other schools and universities. We also have an opportunity to reach out to different statewide organizations. I would highly recommend working with the teachers union and see if they have any type of programs about recruiting different types of ethnic or religious or other types of minorities to their profession. In terms of retaining, we need to make sure that if you're going to work in this district, that you can afford to live in this district. And that's to continue the conversation about affordable housing. In a completely perfect hypothetical world, we would be the district that is able to have, as a city, own housing specifically targeted for our new teachers. If you look at our pay scale and what the definition of affordable housing is, we're looking at people who have college degrees or probably could be teaching in our school system. So we want to keep them there. And we also want to make sure that we're paying them a competitive salary. So at the time comes after they get professional status, they're not tempted to jump to somewhere else that pays more money. And that does happen in our community. So this comes down again to funding and resources. Every line item in our budget can be seen as a way to recruit people. We need to take a careful look at our state funding, advocate for more state funding. And this is something that we should be talking about at every single level of our city. From our police department, our city council, you go into city hall, there should be a more diverse population working there as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Jeff?
This is a recruiting question. In science and biotech, and in any other profession, you build relationships and you maintain a great reputation, and people will come. I think in terms of recruiting, it's a matter of carrying out opportunities where you can either host venues for professional enhancement for teachers, or conferences and meetings, perhaps in the Beverly area, where you can bring teachers from outside the community here, and reach out to those, invite them, interact with them, and have them visit, the community to see how great of a community this is to work in. That's pretty much how I would deal with it as a recruiting exercise.
Thank you. So Jeff, as our city continues to grow, how do we keep class sizes reasonable for our students and prevent our schools from being over capacity?
Well, I think if this city does continue to grow, then there's a plan to funnel the resources in there to staff the schools appropriately, so that they can maintain a reasonable student-teacher ratio. Class sizes could be managed perhaps by also increasing student-teacher numbers as a way to help train budding teachers, perhaps get more of those student teachers in the classrooms to help. In terms of, I don't even know if this would ever fly, but it doesn't seem reasonable. Seniors will be graduating, some seniors will be graduating high school, going to a college environment where classrooms are taught in large auditoriums. Not to say that this is what I'm suggesting, but to help with that transition, you could perhaps have seniors have larger classrooms where they can sort of transition to that type of environment. They are more mature. They will be leaving high school and entering college or the workforce, so perhaps there's ways to deal with that to help sort of balance the numbers.
Thanks. John, how do we keep class sizes reasonable in the face of growth?
So I think a good way to start is to acknowledge the fact that class size has a major impact on a child's education. In the past, I think there was a sometimes cynical approach to say that at any given year, if parents complain about class size, after a couple years, it won't impact their kid and the problem will go away. And I can say that I've seen parents come back who have had their students, when they were in elementary school, go through a larger class size, and their children are currently in the middle school or high school, come back and they advocate for a smaller class size, sharing the experiences that their child has had. So it's owning it. It's saying that the class size is X, we're not happy with it, we want to work to get it lower, and this is something that we need to work with our teachers and say, what is a manageable class size? Because you can give data and say, is it 20 and under, is it 22 and under? I don't think there's many people here who would want to be teaching a kindergarten class of a class size of 23. Our class sizes have been growing, and at one point it was referred to as a bubble. What point is the bubble a trend? And then we need to, again, look at our resources, look at our use of our buildings, and try to come up with some sort of method. I know that our teachers are doing the best that they can, and we have multiple adults in the room working to give the best quality education for our students. That being said, they're probably exhausted, so I think they would appreciate having a smaller class size.
Thank you. So, John, charter schools, what is their role in public education?
There is no role for charter schools in public education. They take funding away from students and demographics that need those funds. A charter school can admit a student in, let's say, fall of 2019. The city, we'll call it Beverly, will give the charter school that money. If that child is dismissed, kicked out, not a member of the charter school, by the spring of that year, we don't get the money back. The charter school gets to keep the money. And there are plenty of good examples of charter schools that are essentially private schools with a religious affiliation under the guise of charter. And honestly, if Betsy DeVos endorses anything, I think we should be walking away from it.
Jeff, what is your view of the role of charter schools in public education?
I do, in fact, think that charter schools could be a great option for kids if they are able to provide quality education. I think there's opportunity for there to be a partnership between public schools and charter schools as a way, as a mechanism to provide education to everyone in the community, because charter schools, certain charter schools may be better suited with a smaller class size or with a particular specialty. There could be some partnership there to help out and work as a partnership. With charter schools working efficiently, with charter schools, with good charter schools in place, you could also think of the fact that they could act as a buffer for when there is a bubble, rather than having to put together a larger school or to accommodate that bubble. So I think there could be ways to sort of engage and work with charter schools as a way to provide education for the kids in the community.
So, Jeff, Beverly is set to receive $2.45 million in the next 7 years through the Student Opportunity Act. How do you see these additional funds being used?
Well, I definitely think that there's lots of uses for this money. I think kindergarten, free kindergarten, would help. Perhaps help that effort along with state and federal funding. I don't know the exact numbers, but the budget for free kindergarten, I think with tuition of $3,000 to $4,000 in Beverly, could be $1 million to $1.5 million. But again, with state and federal funding, that could be addressed. Additional teachers, for sure. I think also academic counseling in the sense that for students that through the high school years, helping them sort of discover where they want to go beyond high school, directing them, setting up internships, helping them experience whether they really do want to move in that direction or not. Using internships as a way to really test the waters as to what you want to do, whether it's a trade, whether it's college, whether it's getting directly into the workforce. And also, I'd like to see more funding with sports, because I think school environment, classroom environment is one thing. The school kids getting into a team or club environment is a totally different experience that is a good balance between the rigor of the coursework and the classwork and the discipline that's needed to study and pay attention for the. It's a way to learn those social skills and round out the student.
Thank you. John, $2.45 million over 7 years. How do you see these funds being used?
So I think acknowledging how we got there from the hard work and advocacy of the MTA, the MASC, and other groups is important. We have a contract year coming up with our different unions in Beverly Public Schools. So having conversations with those members about their contracts is going to be absolutely essential. We have to put that out on the table. It wouldn't be completely fair to come up with my list. Think of it in terms of like a relationship or a marriage. If I all of a sudden came into money, we're going to talk about how we're going to spend that money together. I think the school committee might be due for some couples therapy coming up, actually. But we have our district priorities that we set at retreats. We're going to hear from all of us. We have like a wish list. We'll talk about what's on that wish list. We're going to hear from Dr. Trocheck. She has some programs and some staffing that she would like to see addressed. And I think, using this money towards funding our schools is essential because we rely heavily on our parents and our PTOs. If you're sick of wrapping paper sales, cookie dough sales, canning, every other school fundraiser that you've done your way through for a free and public education, you want to see that money go towards the schools in a way that might take some of the pressure off of our families, all of our families, and also off our PTOs and our boosters so they could fundraise for other things or maybe have a less intense fundraising season. So,
Thank you. Okay, final question of the night. John, how will you empower the superintendent and district administrators to manage the schools? And most importantly, how would you empower and support teachers to effectively teach students?
So in terms of our superintendent, tomorrow evening at 6:30, there's a meeting with myself, Dr. Trocheck, and another member of the school committee to discuss Dr. Trocheck's plan for this school year. So as a school committee, we have the responsibility of evaluating the superintendent. So making sure that she is working with her mentor that she has been assigned by the MASC, by making sure that she has a plan for how she wants to run the school year, what her goals are, making sure they're obtainable and realistic goals, but also goals that match the priorities of the city. Since we have hired Dr. Trocheck and signed her contract, I've had a couple of conversations with her, reminding her that she is the captain of the ship. Her success is directly impacting the success of all our students and all our staff members in the city. In terms of empowering teachers, I think having the endorsement of a couple of educators in the city, as well as the endorsement of the North Shore Labor Council, shows that as an elected official that I am empowering them, and I'll continue to do that if I am fortunate enough to be reelected.
And Jeff?
School committee empowers the superintendent by having clear expectations of the performance of our schools. In addition, there's clear metrics that should be put in place to monitor progress and establish a respectful and collaborative environment to work out differences, work out challenges that happen throughout the year. Again, and to learn from them and apply them for the next year. In terms of empowering teachers, teachers need to have the freedom to determine how the material is presented to the children in their classroom, applying insight from their past experience, best practices, making appropriate modifications based on their particular classroom, where they're able to engage and challenge the students. In terms of the administrators, administrators need to communicate clearly, define policies to the parents and the students that promote a healthy learning environment and provide full support to their teachers to control the operation of their classrooms. They should help create an environment where there's a positive culture that motivates students to achieve and invest in their education.
Thank you. So thank you, guys, for those great answers. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight for the Ward 4 School Committee Candidate Forum. So be sure to vote on Election Day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.